Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me well? Very good. First, I would like to say that it's amazing to be here surrounded by experts in customer experience, customer journey mapping, and learning from you, sharing our experience. I think it's really an amazing opportunity, and thank you, ESSA, for organizing that. Let me figure out the clicker. So, hello everyone, I'm Natalia, and I have experience in UX design and digital marketing, and now I'm working with the customer experience. And I work in Nilfisk. I guess a lot of you have heard about Nilfisk before. It's a world-known manufacturer of cleaning equipment. We are selling in our machines in more than 100 countries and have more than 100 years of history as well. So a huge legacy to work with coming into a company like that. I've been there for a little over 4 years, working with user experience and customer journeys. And my goal today is to inspire, because I believe that customer journey mapping can really be done in any kind of organization and in any kind of role that you are in. And I think this is the most important message that I would like to convey, that you can start where you are. So let me first start. So why did we even start talking about customer journeys? I would like to start with a story. Don't worry, it won't be too long. But a little over a year ago, we had some conversations about customer journey mapping with my colleagues who work with insights or with marketing, and we were discussing that we do have a proud legacy of producing cleaning equipment that we're really proud of, and we involve customers in all the steps of creating those products. So we take pride in customer centricity, but at the same time, when it comes to functions like working with service, customer care, finance, other functions that are not directly product related, how can we improve? How can we really bring the customer centricity from product development into full structure? Because of course, product is one piece of the equation, but of course we also have all the services around it. How can we really spread it in the organization? And we had a lot of conversations, and of course, like I guess many of you will refer to a classic textbook example like this and many others. So this is from Nielsen Norman Group, where you can have end-to-end journey, full view of the touch points, when you can really see what the customer does, why they do it, which kind of pain points they have, how do they feel in that journey, where you can really combine all your insights and take action and really improve and have that end-to-end view. And I think none of us could disagree, also in that conversation in the company, that this is something that we would like to work with. And that was great. That was a great discussion. But also now that we are all experts here together in this room, I have a confession to make. I think working with customer journeys can be overwhelming. Sometimes when you start, does any of you feel the same way? Yeah? Okay, great, I'm not alone making that confession. But in the beginning, it really feels like this picture. Okay, so we have all these journeys, but where does it begin? Like, is it here, or maybe it was there? But then they connect, and then there is another one in parallel. Maybe the same car has gone past a few of them. Like, where do we even begin? And of course, in some companies, maybe you already have a huge investment and a big team, but sometimes you can start also with a smaller team. You can start small, and how do you even start addressing that? Because again, we can all agree that this end-to-end view of the customer can really help us move forward, can really help us innovate. But where to start to create that end-to-end view when you are a company like ours? We have industries ranging from agriculture to pharma to healthcare. They have very different needs. They have very different pain points. Cleaning in a farm and cleaning in a hospital is a completely different story. You use different products. You have completely different work environment. This is not a journey you can just generalize end to end. So how do we even begin? That was our question. And when we were discussing that and like trying to draft some things, how can we make it generic? An image came up, and an image of a toolbox, a little bit like what you see here. You know, like all of us have some sort of toolbox, either in our drawers or in the workshop, where you can have different tools which you can pull out when you need them. And sometimes you need a lot of them. Maybe if you're building a shelf, you need a lot of tools. You need to cut, you need to connect, you need to build. But maybe if you just need to note down your idea, it's enough to take a Post-it and a pen and just note it down. That's also good enough as a tool, right? So depending on the purpose, on the goal at hand, you can pick the different tools and use them. And this is how the idea of creating a customer journey toolbox came up. Instead of trying to boil the ocean, which of course is not a good idea, we decided that what if we combine practices? What if we actually don't need to start large? What if we can start with small steps? Take one practice, take the other, look at the problem at hand and address it. So today I would like to share 3 of the practices, and there is many more. Like any toolbox, it's individual, right? Depending on the company you work for, you can have a completely different toolbox, and some tools will wear out very quickly. You need to improve them and evolve, and some of them maybe are not used that often. Well, that's okay, because we're all different. There is no one size fits all. The most important is that we bring the customer to the center. So I hope to inspire you with these 3 practices and also to discuss many more other ones that we can work with. So let's start with the first one. And just like here, if you look around, you are surrounded by experts. There is so much knowledge just around you. And the same in the company. What we did is we combined our thoughts. We started in a smaller group, initially just 2 people, but we combined our thoughts in a few one-pagers, slides, sent them out to our colleagues, reached out by, you can just write a team message, invite for a short coffee talk, online chat if you're working remote, and just share that, we are thinking about how can we bring customer centricity closer to us? Would you like to collaborate? Would you like to build something together? And I can tell you, I've never heard a no. Whether you reach out to colleagues in finance or in sales or in marketing, there's always interest, because in the end, we all want to make sure that we bring the best experience to our customer, not only with the physical product that we produce, because of course we are a manufacturing company, but also with all the other services around it to make it a full experience. So really reach out to your colleagues, because this expertise can really drive change. And there is, of course, a bonus. So for example, here is just an example of an output. When we brought our colleagues together across the different functions, we chose a journey that we would map, and we just brought all the knowledge from the different areas together. And one thing is, of course, you get an output. You get a view from very different viewpoints, very different angles on what customer is experiencing, what we know about the customer experience. But the huge bonus point is that the discussions that happen around that process, when you are together discussing, okay, but what is happening in ordering? And at that point, I was in marketing. I heard a lot of new things when I talked to sales and to finance, because this is just not part of our daily work. But when you talk together, you can really understand, okay, but there is also a huge improvements we can do in our customer experience if we look at the ordering process. And there is actually some processes there that we didn't know about. And then we could already start some small projects, some small improvements we could agree on just from those discussions. So one thing is, of course, the output that you create. Another thing is the discussions that you spark by inviting your colleagues and then them going to their departments and starting that discussion as well. This way you can spread that approach already by starting those conversations. So go ahead and write to your colleagues. And of course, again, here is a snapshot of overview of industries we work with from our webpage. And as I mentioned, it is spanning a lot of industries, right? So when we started and invited our colleagues, let's begin, let's discuss how can we be more customer-centric. We'll look at this view, and we quickly agreed that, okay, we need to start small. For us, it's natural, for example, to start with industries, because we create products for different industries. So we just picked an industry. What do you believe is the industry we can really map the best right now? Maybe we have some ongoing projects specifically in that industry. Let's pick and map for that industry. But that could also be a customer segment, or maybe you have personas already defined, and then you can pick the key persona, maybe the persona you know most about. That's also, there is nothing bad in starting where it's easy. Or maybe even the sub-journey. Maybe you know that exactly during the checkout there's a lot of things going on because you have a web shop. Well, you can also just start there and map there together and take that process together with the experts and really drill down and understand what is going on there. And there is another advantage to that, because once you pick something more narrow, once you pick a narrow scope, you can really dive deeper into, from all the different angles in the company, all the knowledge that you have, into what happens in that journey. And there is, of course, a lot of different framework stages that you can map from. But one thing you can find out is that we have gaps. Maybe once around the table, you can find out that, okay, but we actually really don't know why do they click on this button all the time, or why does this call happen every time after this process. Whatever it can be, but you can really identify those gaps, and the more specific scope you pick, the more specific the gaps can be, which also makes it easier to begin with, because then you can say, okay, we know exactly where we don't know something. Let's go out to the customers, narrow down our conversation so we don't need to take a 2-hour interview about their entire experience with us, because probably they don't have time. Now, we work with B2B. Our customers also are very busy people, so we really value their time. And if we reach out, we really need to have some specific questions to ask for a reasonable time. And that really enables you to narrow down and understand, okay, this here, and here that we have the gaps, let's ask first about them. And of course, if we can learn about things that we didn't even know about the broader experience, this is great, of course, as well. But really, this is a huge advantage, starting with a narrow scope, because then you can close some gaps and get the full view, maybe of a smaller section of your journeys. And the next practice that I would like to invite you to do is to dream, and dream big, and dream about the future where you can fix the pain points for the customer. Because once you have identified some gaps, I don't imagine there is no pain points or challenges to customer experience. Of course, if they don't have any pain points, well, you can just be happy and deliver the great experience you do. But at least we have found that there are some gaps, there are some pain points that we need to address, that we can really improve for our customers. And this is where I recommend to really try, again, invite your colleagues and dream and imagine. In the future, where this pain point just doesn't exist, how does the experience look like? What are the gains that the customer get in the way? What are the questions do we have? So, okay, we have this future, but then there is some questions that we have, right? Or maybe there are some gaps that could be created while you're creating that future. So really think about, okay, how does it look like in the future? Because once you dream about a future, you can create a to-be experience, an experience that is to come. And for example, here also, we looked into how would that experience look and what would it mean for us in the company? Well, maybe we can identify that there are some missing processes. Maybe there are some web pages that we need to create. Maybe there is something even bigger, some tools. Really, then it allows you to break it down and map out what can you do to get there. And maybe you can only get there 60% of the way because you are dreaming big, but that also creates a vision that you always can get motivated to improve further. It doesn't have to be 100%. Maybe if you can get to 80% and you can already create a delight for a customer, this is a worthy reason to dream. So what I would really recommend you is to build a toolbox as you go. So again, what can really delay the process, if you say, okay, now we're going to build a toolbox, we put the 4 years aside and we build a toolbox that has every tool possible available to create a journey. But there is a challenge as well that, of course, we all work probably in companies that require results, but also we want results, right? It's not very rewarding, but also it's hard to course correct if the time goes for a long time until there is an output. So what I would really recommend you is to document as you go. For example, if you invited your colleagues and you created a presentation of why journey mapping, put it in a folder. Okay, communication. So then you can always refer to that. So there is already a pre-made structure, vision, why to work with journey mapping. If you combined your colleagues together in a workshop or a session and you went through some questions to identify what is the key segment to map, well, document those questions, note that down, make a Miro board, Word document, whatever you work with, just note down those questions, because then next time you would like to do that, that makes it easier. And another advantage is, of course, if you create some templates, something to fill in. Again, save those templates, whichever tools you work with. I feel like tools, of course, are important. The more they enable you, the better, but also the best way to start is what you have. So whichever tool you have right now, take that tool, remember to document, save the template. Take 10 minutes and just write down, okay, so when you use this template, remember to put in this, this, and that, and ask those questions. And this way, the future you, who comes back to do the same process, already can start from the third step and not the first. But the biggest advantage is that this allows you also to onboard more colleagues, because when there is a new colleague or just a colleague who hasn't been part of this process before, instead of starting from scratch again, you can really onboard them and share the tools, share the processes, and they can also take them and evolve. And of course, once you have created some outputs, you've mapped some journeys, you mapped some future scenarios or the to-be journeys, remember to save them as well. Of course, I know there can be confidentiality, but you can always remove some of the details. Here, the most important is to have some kind of pieces of examples, like how can that even look like, that spark and move the conversation forward. Because again, you've taken the first steps, and then you start already on the first floor instead of coming into that building again from scratch. So in this case, a toolbox is something that's a living being. It's something that really allows you to onboard your colleagues, start working and collaborating more actively together. But of course, it also requires some ownership. So of course, I would say I would not recommend to just create the set, save it on OneDrive, like you mentioned before, and let it dust off. I think it's very important to take ownership and to include more colleagues as well to co-own evolving of the toolbox, because it needs to be a living being, and of course also something that others can benefit from, but also bring back. So for example, if somebody used your template and they really understood that it was missing a few key questions that really sparked the discussion, the best if they can just have the chance to put the new template in. So again, you're starting on the next floor, so it's evolving it. But really, I think it's important that there is an ownership of the toolbox, somebody who remembers to update it, to share it, to invite the colleagues to use it. And of course, it can seem like maybe it can also be daunting in a way that you don't want to go up to colleagues and say, okay, now you need to use this template. But it's more about inspiring. It's about facilitating the conversations. And I feel that when you're bringing the colleagues together, I've only received the most positive feedback about the outcomes. And I could see that there was some small projects, small improvements going out. So in this case, I think the most important message for me is that the output doesn't necessarily have to be the textbook end-to-end, full journey of every touch point. If you can reach a point where together you identified a pain point and you found out that actually when we map the future, we realized that this is something we can solve, we can distribute the tasks and solve that pain point, isn't that a great achievement already? Then you're already improving the journey. Maybe you don't have the full journey, and of course there can be hundreds of them if you map every single journey, but just taking the first step, improving a pain point, improving an experience is already a worthy cause to start working with the toolbox. And I believe that eventually when you work more and more, you will start building that picture and the full picture of the journeys. But it's definitely not a necessity to start. So I think that to start, it's just important to take the first step. Pick any kind of tool that you already know how to work with. Invite your colleagues, talk with them about what they experience from the customers. Try to map just a little section with the tools that you have, and think about the future where you can change. Because when you think about the future, you also take the step. You can also take the steps to already make the change, and that both creates the better experience for your customer, which is very a necessary step, but also it helps you to show the results right away, even before you have the full end-to-end mapping. And showing those results will really help to move this whole thinking ahead. I really hope I could inspire you to take the first steps wherever you are in the journey. And I'm looking forward to talking with you and getting your feedback as well.